If that's okay.
Yeah.
And you can even participate in one of them. I thought you might give me some insight on one of them.
Okay.
Okay? So chicken, what is it? Colors. I had to write that down, otherwise in my old age I forget. You may go on ahead and do that. Yes. Okay, class.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. There was an old, you guys know who Cheech and Chong were? Or are? So they had like this old, there's a tape called, or record, an LP, I still have it, called Up in Smoke, and it was from a movie they had. And in one of the things, it was like an old nun in a class, and she was like, class. So that's I feel like the old nun.
Are you the old nun?
That's what I feel like. Hold on, I gotta get my voice on. Who are we missing? I know Dustin is not here today. Yeah. Advise that. Class, hello, sound check, yep. Where's Nicola?
Can't hear you. She's outside talking to
Oh, she's talking to Eric?
Yep.
Okay, so while we're waiting, we have a guest speaker today. I'll introduce him. You've met him before, but
I'm trying to shut it down. It's this tiny screen. I'm more of the power off button.
so while we're waiting, I saw something yesterday on I think it was like Facebook or something. I didn't realize. So most of you guys are not from another country. I mean, some of you are. Some of you, like Frederick's from another country, comes from Jacksonville. But even those of you who come from another country speak English. And what happens? Some of us who were born in another country, English can be a very difficult language to learn. So, for example, you know, one of the words when I was growing up, one of the things I had problems with were the words chip and, for example, ship, and, for example, sheet, and something that sounds like sheet, but isn't sheet, right? And chicken is one of those words that's very difficult to pronounce, chicken. So yesterday, I saw pronunciation for Hispanics, and it was the word, or the words, chicken wing. As in, my wife, she buys the lottery to see if she can win some money. Sorry, I had to get that was pretty bad, but you got this? Okay, but I'm trying to, you're not trying to like add a little bit.
Hey, that's
So she can win some money, okay. Okay, so with that one, okay. So the next one, I'm driving it, I remembered along those lines. I don't know if any of you have ever had to do the citizenship. See, it comes out every day. No, citizenship test, right? So, you know, it was an old Cuban guy, and he was struggling because he was really scared, and he didn't speak English that well, and so the guy said, look, don't worry about it. You just have to know the names of the presidents, and your elected officials, and some numbers, and colors and things like that, So the guy goes in and, who's the first president? George Washington. Who's the mayor of Miami? Tomás Regalado. He knew that one, Who's the president now? Obama. So, he's on a roll, There they go. Okay, now you have to speak English. You have to show me that you know how to speak English. The guy swat and he goes, okay, you need to make a sentence with the following three colors. Okay, with the color green, with the color yellow, and the color pink. And the guy's like, okay, when the phone green, I pink it up and I go yellow. Okay. good, no? I mean, look, they're clean jokes. I don't know that many clean jokes, honestly. Okay, look, I need somebody to pull out their calculator, and I really need to work with it. So can somebody pull out their calculator, please? I only brought one thing from the newspapers this week, okay? Oh, interesting how, what a small world we live in, right? So I'm going through the journal the other day, and I see an article on Staples. And I just sort of glance at the picture of the store, and I go, shit, that's the one I go to. And I'm like, no, they all look the same. And I look really close, and it says, above a store in Miami. And it's a store by your house. The one on Coral Way and 32nd Avenue. You're like, wow, you know, it's like, that's the store I go to. What a small world, you know? So anyway, Staples. So we talk about what's happening in society. What are the paradigm shifts that are going on and how that impacts our business. And there's two or three I always keep talking about. I can't ever get my hands around them, but I know stuff is happening, okay? So we've talked about in office, you know, the whole issue with the way people work. Telecommuting, smaller office sizes, you know, hotel sharing or hoteling or office sharing, blah, 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 blah. Retail is the same thing because the internet, and in particular companies like Amazon, have totally changed the paradigm of the way people buy stuff. I'll give you an example. My garage door opener broke. You know the thing with the number? I got like 4 of them, and one of them broke. So I go, okay, I'll go to Sears and get one. What?
You got 4 of them, huh?
Well, because I have the office and I have the house. And there's 2, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. No, I have 1 car, I have a truck. So anyway. So, yeah, I go to the Sears, right there, right by where Andrew lives on Coral Way, 37th Avenue, where I bought the stuff. Anybody been in a Sears lately? It's like a death foretold, right? Has anybody been in a Sears lately? No, okay. Okay, problem number 1. Nobody's been in a Sears lately. Problem number 2, you go to a Sears, they don't have stuff in stock. I'll give you a third problem with Sears. Then you go and say, okay, I'll just buy it online from Sears because it's a craftsman thing, you know, I'll buy it from Sears. So they got the worst online platforms. There's like a craftsman platform, but then that sends you to a Sears. You can't find a damn thing. You can't even get the damn manual to see what the part number is, and there's no part number on it. I mean, eventually I found out that if I go to the Westland store in Hialeah, I can find it. Now, that was 2 weeks ago. If I had just bought it online, I'd have it already. Because I don't have time to go to the Westland store, okay? And I will buy it online. I'm not going to bother going. So, we've talked about several businesses that have been impacted by the way people shop. Office supplies were a very fast-growing sector of retailing for a while, and there were 3 large chains. What were they?
Staples, Office Depot, and Office Max.
Right, and then what happened there?
Office Max and
Then Office Depot merged, right? Plus, what's been happening over time? They've realized that they don't need, because what's the model of those stores? It's a warehouse, and you go in and everything's there. They don't really have a warehouse. The warehouse is the store, right? Now, when you're working with thin margins, right, what's the problem with thin margins? If you got to carry inventory, you guys remember your accounting, you know, basic accounting class in college? What the cost of carrying inventory is, it's huge. So you need the space, but you're paying somebody for the goods, and it's money that's just sitting there, right? Not doing anything. And I'll tell you how real it is. I wanted to buy some stuff for the coaches, for the soccer coaches. So I called Miami Lake Sports Shop. That's where I bought them last year, and that's where I placed the previous order. So he gives me a price. We bought all the stuff from soccer.com. Soccer.com is a company called Sports Endeavor in North Carolina, and they figured out how to mass market all the same junk the kids, you know, all the soccer clubs and all this in the country have. So, coach's shirt, a Nike Gun Ho Polo, Soccer.com, $23.27. Miami Lake Sporting Goods, $29.50. And then so on down the line. We bought these mid-academy jackets. They were $56 at Miami Lakes. They gave them to us for $44. And so on down the line. So I called the owner of Miami Lakes. I go, listen, Jim, I want to give you the business. He says, I can't. He goes, the volume discount that I get I can't pass that, I'm already giving you what I wouldn't be in business, you know? And his whole point is if you can eliminate the overhead, so soccer.com doesn't have a physical presence. Bunch of guys working in a little town in North Carolina, right? And they outsource everything, and they don't carry any stock, and there's no cost, you know? Jim in Miami Lakes has to have a store on Main Street, somebody's got to work at the store all day long, you know, blah, blah, blah. So what's happening with Staples? So listen to this. Office Depot earlier this year set plans to close 400 locations. 400 locations, 150 this year. So let's just say this year alone, Office Depot is going to close 150 stores, okay? Staples announced this week that they are going to close 170 stores this year. 320 stores. What's the average footprint of one of these stores?
New stores or the older ones?
The older models, not the new 5,000, 4,500?
More than that, no?
More?
20,000?
No, I don't think it's that much. Do you think it's that much? Do you have one in that? Do you have one there?
Yeah. The one we're doing now,
Okay. That's why I wanted you. That's why I wanted you to
they
participate.
previously had 50 and now they're down to 20.
So they had 50.
Yeah.
How big those things are?
Previously had 52.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we use 40? Want to use 40?
Yeah.
Let's use 300. Who's calculating? Who's got the calculator? 320 stores times 40,000 square feet. It's not like a supermarket, but okay. That's
12,800,000.
12,800,000 square feet coming offline this year. Now, you know, likely there's going to be a termination fee or whatever, but the guy that owns the center now's got dark space, so he'll have a boom this year. If he tries to sell it, there's no cash flow. Okay? What's the rent on that?
$7.
7 in most places. 'Cause it could be more.
Could be more, but there's upside too because they're older leases and.
So
now you can
let's
bump
use
them up.
10 to 12?
Sure.
$10. What's that? Under $22 million? 128 in annual rents, right? Cap that at what? 6%?
6. Yeah.
How much value have just taken out of the real estate market in this country? Or out of the owner's pockets in this country? Well, I'm assuming they can't backfill it right away, but that's,
2,133,330. 3,330,330.
A lot of threes.
Threes.
$2.1 billion worth of value from a little story with 2 lines in it. And what's happening is I didn't use the 400 stores that are going to close over the next 3 years. I only use what they're going to close this year. And the question then becomes, what fills that space? Right? Because what's happening is they're finding that the only way that they can work is by having smaller platforms and a huge online store. If you buy from Staples, they'll deliver free. You buy online, they'll deliver free the next day. They've got their own and that's cheaper for them than it is to have a store.
What's that 320 right there? 320 times 40,000.
320 stores.
Yeah.
Office
what's that?
Depot's closing 150, Staples is closing 170.
Oh, okay, that's where you got that from.
320. So, you know, 2 little lines in an article just wiped away $2 billion worth of commercial real estate value. So, do I care? Well, Andrew's going to go over some things today. If he underwrites a center that has an Office Depot in it, and he just heard this story, he's going to think twice when he's doing the investigation. He's going to talk to management, or he's going to want to talk to management and find out what the intentions are. Or he might already write or do some sensitivity analysis in his model saying, hey, you know, when their lease is up, the best I can think is they might reduce down to a $10,000 square foot store, or 20,000 square foot store. Or, you know, look, there's an Office Max next door, I might be the one that gets shut down. Okay? So, little stories ultimately have an impact in what we're doing in our business. with that, I'd like to turn over the floor. You all met Andrew Remick in the first class. Andrew came with Glenn and with Claudia. Andrew graduated from the program about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And Andrew has worked at Flagler, and Andrew has also now the last 2.5, 3 years been working at CREC. I think he gave you a little bit of his background, but he is very much involved in acquisitions. They look at a significant number of deals. And what I've asked Andrew to do is to come in today, and he's going to walk through one deal and sort of walk through how he looks at a deal. So you've heard from Nachi how he looks at a deal. You've heard from Jesse how to look at different deals. Then you hear from somebody else, because the more exposure that you get, the more experiences that you hear, the more you're going to learn. So we could read books, but real life experiences are the best. So Andrew, you need to know how to drop this down.
Yes.
So you drop it down with that black button.
And did you send out the OM?
I did. So I sent you guys the OM during the week. So you can look at it. So it's not to look at it on the screen now. So if you printed it, you can follow along with Andrew, okay?
Did you guys read it yet, or
Yeah.
any questions, thoughts, quick overview, or?
I had a question.
Yeah.
I was looking at the rent rolls, and
Uh-huh.
I thought the rental rates were much higher than like the average that I would be able to pull online. I didn't know if there was a reason why, or maybe I was misreading what was included in their rent. So like, for example, that market on the retail side is like $20 triple net, but it's a $10 cam charge, and every tenant there's paying like $30 to $40.
Hold that thought for a second. I want you to do, what I'd like you to do is, Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit about what CREC does and the deals you look at as a backdrop,
Okay.
and whether this is a typical deal or not, and how you would, you're going in alone, you're going with a partner, and then come back to his question.
So CREC is more of a promoter. We find the deals once we find the, well, depending on what it is. If it's a smaller deal, we'll go in on our own, call it 10 million or less. If it's a larger deal, we'll partner up with either a hedge fund or institutional partner, whether it's Fortress to DRA to Lupert Adler. And what we look for is really value-add centers. This is a weird mix because Western Road is really a stabilized deal, but should Office Max or AC Moore leave, then it's a completely different and it's really a value-add deal. We'll also do some stabilized deals depending on the partner. That's really it. I mean, we also have the other side of it, which is the management and leasing, which also helps us get these partnerships because they know that we're going to do an awesome job executing the business plan.
So then to summarize, you're a promoter, you focus primarily on retail assets?
Everything.
So
Retail, office.
Is there a geographic focus?
South, the major markets, South Florida, West Coast, Tampa, Jacksonville, I mean,
State of Florida?
State of Florida, really.
Okay, so all asset classes geographically in Florida, value plus type, where you can add some expertise and hopefully value creation.
Correct.
Primarily through your property management and brokerage network.
Yes.
Okay? Listen to that, guys, because ultimately, if you want to promote a deal, but you don't have a back-end shop that, hey, everybody can find money. The question is, can you make money, right? And the only way you can make money, in our history, in our case at Cadena, our property management and brokerage businesses, some people thought it made a lot of money. It depends how you allocate overhead. They didn't make any money. And those people were a pain in the ass to deal with, especially the brokers. But they gave you reach, and they gave you market knowledge. And they gave you then the opportunity to go into the marketplace and convince the guys with the money that they should give it to you. So think about that as you think about your careers and the things that you want to do. It's not just about doing the numbers, it's can you then, walk the talk. I'm sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, of course. So real quick,
You had a question on the rent roll.
rent roll. Let me get back to that once,
Okay,
but
better.
is there more general questions as in the shopping center area? What happened with Winn-Dixie and why AC Moore's here, Office Depot? So this is an interesting deal because there was a 52,000 square feet space that it was a prior Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie left, subleased it to Office Depot and AC Moore. Now that creates in my mind sort of a value add because we all know that Office Depot is sort of downsizing. So if they're paying $7 rents and I know I can get an anchor for 22 in this area, that's a huge pop. So that's why this deal really caught our eye. Let's sort of go through it. I mean, what I usually do is I read through it real quick just to get a general sense of what it is, what's happening, and after that I'll go through, get more in detail, speak with my leasing agents, speak with property management, try and get income and expenses, and then after that I'll go through the market, go through the comps, then meet with either my lenders or my partners and really see how the deal fits. Let's go through it real quick.
The source of your deals, Andrew, is the brokerage community, or are you guys?
Through us, so I mean, we have contacts, so we usually don't work with, well, on the buyer side, we don't use any brokers. We use CB and whatever else, and they'll come to us and they'll send us the package.
But do you try to source deals off market, going directly to owners, or not really?
Yes, so I would rather get a off-market deal than have to compete with the whole world. So I mean, as of now, in order to also looking at all the on-market deals, my other focus is calling up owners every day on shopping centers, whether it's on Las Olas to your bigger, more complex stuff in Miami or just Publix anchored stuff. I would say off-market deals are hard to complete, but you're not competing with the market and paying some outrageous price. Well, sometimes you are, but not always. All right, so executive summary briefly goes through what it is. Year build, occupancy 97. Okay, great. I mean, it's stabilized, which usually to me it's not what I'm looking for, but because of the anchor situation, it makes things interesting.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What's GLA?
Gross leasable area.
Leasable.
All right, so we see here that the Office Depot subleased the 52,000, and then subleased part of their space to AC Moore at the 26.6.
On the screen it's sort of flickering. I wonder if.
Andrew,
A timer?
when did this deal take place?
This deal closed July of this year, so I saw this probably a year ago.
Okay, and did you prevail? Did you buy this?
Yes and no. It's complicated. At the end of the day, because of the fund we were working with, we weren't able to do a JV. So in return, we kept the management and leasing.
What's a JV?
Joint venture.
Okay.
So usually it's like a 90-10 or 80-20, but because of the fund and their particular what they have going on, they weren't allowed to do any
So it was a
JV.
restriction on having partners, or it was an issue with the return that they couldn't carry
It was
partner?
they could only have so many JVs, and they would have rather use another to use the JV for a larger deal instead of a deal like this.
And so, you know, what happened, by the way, I've never heard of that, but I've heard of other crazy stuff. So what happens is, you know, going back to relationships, right? If you want to harbor the relationship, you know, either they've done things for you in the past where you will agree to, you know, give up some money on this, or you know that they will in the future. And many people in this industry, especially at an institutional level, are pretty honorable. Some aren't. There's one large institution that we did some business with. They flat out would not do joint ventures. We had the management, we had the brokerage, and we took them a transaction, and they said, okay, we'll joint venture it with you. We went down the line, we had the contract, we transferred the contract to them, and then they came back and said, hey, we're going to close on this, but you can't be in it because, you know, we can't have partners at all. I said, wait a minute, you knew this 3 years ago. We'll start, you know, oh, well, we'll give you the management. And, you know, that we did the same thing on another deal with them. And same thing. So what the story is, burn me once, shame on you. Burn me twice, shame on me. So, you know, that's just stuff. You just have to know who your partners are and who you do business with.
Yeah, and lucky enough for us, these are guys that are, it's a large institution who we continue to do business with other JVs, so we're not really worried about it. I mean, it sucks that I spent all this time and effort and there's no fee or anything else, but sometimes you just gotta suck it up and it is what it is, right? So let's go through this. I mean, OMs, it's a lot of fluff. I mean, you can go through their cash flow, you can go through their NOI growth. Is it real? Usually not. So let's look in here on the investment highlights. Two things in here really caught my eye. One is the Office Depot rent. So they're paying $744. Now, on an anchor space this large, that seems like a good price, but in Weston, that's actually really low. Weston has limited commercial, which means everybody and their mom wants to be there. Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, everybody, and they're willing to pay 20s, mid-20s. So if I could somehow recapture their space, whether it's buying them out and then them leaving, it could be a huge return. And then second is the shop rents are below average of the market. Market here, it's, I would say gross is about 45. We're charging 30 plus another 10 in CAM.
And Andrew, where do you source your market data from? Is that the brokerage telling you, or using CoStar?
That's a mix of everything. So it's CoStar, it's brokers. We just bought a note on a shopping center two streets down, so I have that rent roll. We manage and lease a shopping center, another Publix or a Publix anchor in Weston that's probably a mile down. So I mean, we just have
and that input is much more valuable than CoStar.
because CoStar is asking. So asking is one thing. What are deals really happening? So with the market, I'll go through everything and show you rent rolls of other plazas to really see where the market is. So those two things: low rent on Office Depot, and then low rent on the shop space.
What's the sub-market considered to be?
What was that?
Sub-market
On where?
on the site's location?
Some market is, I think it was Southwest Broward, but more, to keep it realistic, it's more of a Weston sub-market. You know, you're really not competing with Pembroke Pines or Davie or anything else. I mean, technically, this is in Davie because it's off the line, or it's just off the Weston property line, which is good because of one, taxes, two, code and enforcement, it isn't heavy. Landscaping's a lot easier than having to deal with Weston, so it's in Weston, but it's technically in Davie, which is a huge upside too.
How so?
What's that?
How is it a huge upside to be in Davie as against to be?
Taxes.
What's the difference in taxes?
Weston's millage rate is a lot higher than Davie, so each city sets their own tax amount. And then second, code enforcement. I mean, dealing with permits and code and zoning in Weston is a pain in the butt. And then also landscaping. Weston is very tree friendly. Our other shopping centers are lined with trees, so there's no visibility. You just can't see. Here, there's trees, but you can easily see what's in the plaza.
Oh, it's curious, about a year ago, we had a soccer tournament up sort of in that Weston area, and we went looking for lunch with the kids. And you drive by these places and you can't see what's in them.
Exactly, because of all the trees. Yep.
And you're like driving around going, dude, I just want the Chipotle store, you know, like, but Nicola, to that point, and I think what's critical here is Andrew's bringing to the table things that you're not gonna find in CoStar or REEs or anybody else, okay? And it's where the rubber meets the road, right? So, I'll give you a perfect example. Our corporate headquarters in Coral Gables, you know, we get it approved, you know, it's a nightmare to get something approved in the Gables. So, you gotta get the paint approved.
Yep.
So we take them a paint that's part of their official color palette. And their guys say, no, we don't want it. So you go, but it's part of the approved palette. Yeah, that's okay, we don't want it. And so you go back to the drawing board. I'm in a fund with my old boss. We're doing a 300 some odd, you know, unit apartment complex in the Gables. We're 3 years into the zoning, planning, permitting part. We now got it approved, now it's getting the building plans through, and they've been on this for 6 months. And you know, just some people, some cities make life miserable. They may not say they're anti-development, they may not be anti-development, right? The code enforcement officer in Key Biscayne lives 2 doors down from me. Guy's a prick, forgive my language. And then the guy that takes care of the condo the other day told me the guy has an illegal garage, an illegal apartment in his garage. So it's kind of funny. But the guy makes, you know, his living is he drives around the island looking to put red tags on people, you know? Some people are motivated by making people's life miserable. If you got a 200,000 square foot center, and you know you're going to have to re-tenant this thing, right? And you don't want to sit with dark space for a year, you know, and signage, and they don't approve of the signs, they don't like neon, or they don't like the location, or they don't like the size, or the trees. That all inhibits your ability to make money. So, Andrew's here talking about money, and he's talking about everything but money that ultimately impacts it. So, the whole process in real estate is critical, especially the regulatory one.
It is. It's huge. I mean, I've gone through deals that I've dropped because zoning won't allow a certain use, or zoning requires parking requirements that are crazy. And while there's vacant space and you think that you can lease it up, you can't, because you're already overparked due to restaurants, and you have an office use and a dentist, which is really parking intensive. So can you lease that other stuff up? No. So you're running a vacancy of 15% off the start. So let's go through, keep on going through here. Asset overview, whatever, just the HVAC, electric, that's more stuff for my construction guys, and then site plan. So going through this, you see Office Depot and the AC Moore space are like bowling alleys. So that's one thing to consider. If they vacate, who can you really put in them, because stores would rather more frontage than depth. And even if you chop them up into say 4, that's 10 times worse. So realistically, this thing will pop up. Would you have to cut their space off here and just build a wall and just get rid of all of that there?
Let me see if it's HDMI cable.
Hold on, dude.
Let's just see if it goes
Down in the bed. So you guys just heard from Andrew, one of the things that's important for retailers is frontage space, right? I mean, industrial guys may care about depth or width for different reasons, but retailers, it's visibility to their customers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm dealing on another center now. I'm dealing with Trader Joe's, and they have specific requirements, and they basically will not go anywhere unless they have X amount of feet, and that's it. No, nothing less, nothing more. So a lot of retailers do have that requirement. Second thing I saw on this is, can you turn this into a box? So, hey, if I build this out, can I, instead of, if they don't leave, can I put Trader Joe's here? Can I put Whole Foods here? Or maybe even all of this here? So that's one thing. And then the third is the out parcel, which, okay, great. I mean, so if you know this area, the exit ramp from 75 is here, Griffin Road's here, and there's no access here. So to have an out parcel here, is it really going to do well? I don't know. I mean, I know McDonald's does okay.
That's kind of hidden, that area.
Yeah, and then second is, if I have a new anchor here, are they going to allow that because of visibility?
Even the McDonald's there is pretty hidden. Like from the Griffin Road or from Western Road.
It is.
You hardly see.
You
McDonald's.
mean technically, because you really can't see this and
No.
you can't see this.
Exactly.
Okay, so Andrew, what you're saying is whoever is selling this unit or this project is telling you that you've got some unlocked value in a potential sale of an out parcel.
Correct.
And so, your question number one is there really value in that out parcel, number one? And number two, if there isn't, can I still use the development rights associated with it by repositioning those square feet somewhere else in the project?
Correct.
You guys got that?
Yes.
So development rights have value, presumably. Now, the case Andrew talked about earlier, I'm overparked already. I have development rights for another, McDonald's, but you're overparked. So you may theoretically have development rights, but you may not have pragmatic development rights, okay? So, but again, development rights have a value, and whoever's going to market a property is going to try to sell you on that, and it's your job to try to ascertain whether there is value and what that value really is.
Yeah, and with that said, before I was on the acquisition side, I was on the brokerage side, and I'm going to sell you the whole moon, stars, and sun. I mean, I'm going to tell you everything that there is in the hopes that you buy into it. So the key is reading through these OMs, not to take everything for what it is, sort of read into it, really study it, and know it. Is that out parcel really going to do well there? Is it viable? All right, so let's go on. Market overview. I usually skip these over. It's a bunch of fluff. Demographics. Let's go back to one thing I do like or do love about Weston is demographics. I mean, your average household income around the board is over $100,000. I think The city of Weston alone is, the average household income is $120,000, which is huge. So with that, I mean, that's an area, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, any high-end grocer market would love to be in, and nobody's been able to penetrate that market yet because it's just Publix and that's it.
And Andrew, does your company work sort of from the tenant side saying, hey, I've got Whole Foods in 3 different centers. Their people, their real estate people tell me they're looking for certain areas. Hence you target?
Absolutely. So on the leasing side, we exclusively handle all of Sports Authority, Target, Bye Bye Baby, Kohl's. We handle about probably 25 major brands exclusively from Orlando down. And knowing what they want and what they do, we're always looking for new centers for them. Which is why we know one of our tenants would love to be here, so maybe we could fit them in.
So notice how that makes your underwriting a lot easier, right?
10 times
You say,
easier.
hey, have I, you know, you can reach out to somebody and touch them and they'd say, yeah, we'll go in there.
And it's not only that, but we've also developed relationships with other tenant reps who we can speak to and say, hey, do you think so-and-so would want to come here, and at what rate, to sort of get a general understanding of what they want to pay and if they're willing to even pay or overpay for this space. Next few pages are just a bunch of aerials, which close up, which shows. That's all I know.
It's not you.
I
It's
apologize.
the
Yeah.
I'm trying
No
to
worries.
side of the table.
So you see, there's, I mean, besides this center here, there's nothing here. I mean, there's a few industrial here, there's an industrial park here. Once you cross over to Royal Palm, which is here, there's a couple of stuff here, but there's not another Publix until here, and there's one south in Pembroke Pines. So your trade area is really from way out here, everything.
Andrew, does Whole Foods mind going close to Publix?
No, not at all.
I prefer it actually. What?
Yeah. Alright, so here's what CB's comp set is. So if you look through here, okay, great, there's a Publix here. I mean, to the south, you really don't have anything.
And
the-
how wide a radius is realistic in retail in a dense area like South Florida?
I think it depends who you're talking to. I mean, given that these Publixes are so close, all of them are doing over 700 a foot, some even a 1,000 a foot, which is huge numbers when the average is $500, which just speaks to how wealthy this area is and how it seems as if it's really penetrated, but it's not. I mean, it's really hard to really just Weston's master plan allowed for limited commercial uses. So while there's 1, 2, 3, 4 Publixes, but there's not one anywhere here. In this area here, so everybody here is either driving to across the street or to here. And then with that said, there's not a lot of restaurants in the area. It's very limited. So a lot of Weston people will drive down to Davie, drive down to Plantation. So if you create more of those uses in this center, your daytime population and also your nighttime population will grow. So this is their set of comps. I usually break this down and then make up my own, which I'll show you later, because these numbers, who knows if they're fudged or whatever else. I just really would rather use my own rents.
So you're professionally skeptical about whatever the broker is telling you.
Exactly. I mean, usually brokers are good people, but they also want to sell. So you sort of gotta lay back. Tenancy, this is just a rent roll. And then the other thing, which I forgot to mention about the Office Depot lease, is that if you read here, the tenant reimbursements, they're only paying $1.25, which is low. I mean, CAM here is $10, so you're losing out on another $9. $9 times 52,000, so another almost $500,000 in expenses. And then you could go down here, see the rents. I mean, rents are averaging 32, 33, 34, so call it 33 plus 10, so 43 on average. And then another important part.
Andrew, is the computer flickering or is it?
No, it's just the screen. Is the anchor summary. So the abstract. Yeah. Got it.
Now we put out the whole thing, restart it. How do you think that was running?
I can't get to the back.
It's fine.
I'm just
Yeah, we'll
uncomfortable.
work. I'll do it. Any more?
I'm cursing out right now.
Andrew, how much do you all like analyze some of like the smaller tenants, and because like you see a lot of different like Pizza Heaven and Tutti Frutti and some of these smaller companies.
We really don't. I mean, it goes two ways. You can really tell by how long they've been there. If they've been there for the past 10 years, you know that they're doing good. If it's a new tenant on the Argus run, which I'll show you, we usually give them, say, a 75% chance of renewal. If we know that they're not doing good, we'll say that they'll vacate. In the Argus run, it gives you a percentage that you think that tenant will either leave or stay. And then it'll sort of combine everything. The TIs, the LCs, the abatements.
We'll talk about that a little bit more as Andrew gets to the analysis.
That my candidate's count is very funny.
Say that again?
Hold on to your question.
You're on YouTube then.
Alright, it's fine. Alright, so the anchor lease.
I think you made it worse.
Yeah, stop.
Can we restart
guys.
the whole thing? This thing?
I tried typing
Let's do a
now.
5-minute
Yeah,
intermission.
whatever. I'm almost done with this.
Don't worry, we all.
So anchor lease abstract. So we know they've been there since '99. They have five-year options, which is that sucks. Honestly, percentage rent, common area maintenance. So they only pay $1.25 in increasing $10 or I'm sorry, 10 cents a foot every year. No, I'm sorry, at the extensions. Maintenance and repairs doesn't matter because they pay the $1.25, but they are responsible for their HVAC, doors, interior, plumbing, windows, plate glass, everything. And then exclusive rights, which you always want to be careful of, especially in grocery stores. A lot of them won't allow specific uses. A lot of Publixes, Winn-Dixies won't allow gyms. They won't allow more than 5,000 square feet of office. They won't allow certain clubs or bars or anything else because they want to have a certain look to the center that they're in. This one, the only exclusive is a office supply store for furniture and office machines. And then the real thing that I was looking at was the recapture rate. So the only recapture rates that you have is if AC Moore or Office Depot isn't in business for more than 180 days. And the second is if we added an amendment in there stating that if they sublease to somebody else, we have the right to recapture the entire space. Parking requirements. So they require 520 spaces, which again goes to the out parcel. Prohibited uses, again, so you can't use HIV clinics, no bars, teen lounges, bowling alleys, pawn shops, game parlors, theaters. And then lease provisions, a lot of them state whether you can move them or not. So a lot of times in my leases, I like to add the provision that I can move them in case I want to remodel the center, in case I have a huge anchor space that I need to extend to add somebody else in there. And then financials, I'll get this more into my side because these are great and it gives me a quick back of the napkin math on what the broker's asking for. So if I take year one NOI at, what is that, 1,877,990 and take cap it on 6.5. I know he's looking for at least $30 million on a 6.5 cap, which Publixes are generally trading low 6s to 6.5, maybe in Weston a high 5 cap. And then this is their underwriting assumptions that they use for Argus. So you know that they use a stabilized occupancy of 97%, inflation at 3%, vacancy loss at 5%, management fee at 3%, and capital reserves at 15 cents a foot. The other thing that a lot of brokers are tricky on is that they'll leave the prior year's taxes in the OM. So you know that once you buy the shopping center, the taxes will be reassessed and most likely go up. So where their taxes now, they're underwriting at 400 grand. I think realistically it's almost 500 once it's sold and reassessed. Market.
I think you can assume that no broker will reassess it, or they'll go like really low.
Yeah.
And then when you question them on it, they'll say, oh, well, you know, we always assume that you would do your own analysis.
Yeah, exactly. Market leasing, so you know that their market rates are 28, okay, good, through 42. 42 seems high. I'm guessing that the 42 space is for the frontage along Western Road, not the stuff that's in the back. There's only one space left to lease. They're marketing it at the 35 with TIs at 10, and that's about it. So once this is done, you can either run an Argus. I usually run a real quick 10-minute Argus just to see where it's falling and see if I'm coming close to where the broker is. If that's so, I'll usually then go to my leasing guys. I'll go to my banker and ask them for quotes and everything else. So let's see. So once the market's done, this is what I usually come up with, and I'll show you how I come up with this.
Okay, so as he's passing this out, notice what's happened. He's in an acquisitions group in a promoter. They're always looking at deals. Brokers are bringing him deals. He's getting all these books. He's got limited time, right? So now he's read all the fluff. Notice how he would just blow through all the pictures and all the glossy and all that stuff. It's like at the end of the day, he's got to do his own analysis. But he pretty zoned in on who are the tenants, what are they paying, what restrictions are there on leases, what are the major assumptions that they've used in the cash flow, and he said, hey, ballpark, this is a $30 million deal. So I don't know how many square feet it is, but you can come back and do it in gross dollars or so much per square foot. And all of a sudden he has said, okay, it's worth pursuing or it's not worth pursuing, and now let me start a more detailed analysis to validate or invalidate what the broker who's trying to sell the deal is telling you.
So there's 4 sheets total. First we'll go through the rent comps. Usually I'll create this with my leasing guys and sort of just go through every center in Weston. And as you can see, occupancy is at high 90s to 100%. The only one that is low is the Waterway Shops, which is because it was a distressed note sale, which we bought, and now that's probably at 95%. And the other one is Weston Lakes, which is due to a former Blockbuster leaving. So you can probably underwrite this and be safe to say that you're underwriting to an occupancy level of stabilized at 95 to 97. And then rents. Rents, I usually look at not only the triple net number, but the gross. I want to see on a whole dollar how much each tenant's paying. So on gross, they're paying 50, 56. So on average, it's about $50 to 55. So if I know if I'm not a Publix anchored center and gross rents are at 50, our gross rents might be, oh, I'm sorry, if gross rents are at 55, I should probably be at 50, which means my triple nets are between 40 on the high side.
Are you still on that? Okay. Are you going to switch pages?
I'm going to switch
So let me
pages,
ask you a
unless you
question.
wanted to.
Well, this information comes from where, Andrew?
So this is from my leasing team, getting with them, and then it's also calling up other brokers and the market and saying, hey, where's your deal? But this is great, but this is more of asking rents. So I want to see what deals are actually being done.
Okay.
And then you guys should have another sheet there that looks like this. So these are actual deals that are getting done in Weston. So let me just.
And the source of this information, Andrew,
is through other OMs. It's through marketing rent rolls that I have, deals that we own or manage. So it's really a mix of just pulling everything.
I always use this example with our construction company, right? So you're looking for a deal, or you're looking to develop something. Okay, I gotta call a contractor. Listen, if you're a contractor already, you got a database of costs. That's better than anybody else giving you a price, right? That's the same thing here. You can call brokers, you can use sources, but if over time you're looking at a lot of deals in a market, you've got a bunch of OMs where you've seen lease data. You keep all that. You gotta be a pack rat. You gotta keep junk.
Absolutely.
Because you never know when, now all of a sudden, between deals that he's done, deals that he's looked at, or deals that his brokers are doing on somebody else's center, he's got real data. Now he could say, hey, 28 bucks or 30 bucks or 40 bucks or 50 bucks is a real number, or not. And is there a value opportunity here? So can I mark to a higher market, or am I already at market and this is not a value play, this is a core play? And why is that important? Because the money he's got is value money. So if he buys a Publix that's leased with five-year options at 5.75%, that's a core guy. He just wants that return on his money.
Yep.
But that's not what he's looking for. He needs more than that. So more than that means tenant's got to blow out, and he's got to get higher rents. And he's got to make sure that the market says he can get higher rents.
Yeah. So this, I'll use this and derive my market rent. So we know waterway shops down the street, non-anchored centers getting gross rent 41. Waterway shops too, again, down the street, unanchored. Shops of Weston, which is a Publix anchored 45. Weston Lakes 41. So I could easily say that gross rents are probably in between 40 and 45.
Alex, does that address your question?
I guess. I pulled the CBRE report that said differently, that's why I was trying to.
But the CBRE report, was it for Weston or for Southwest?
Yeah, that was specifically for
Broward.
Southwest Broward, and it even referenced the sale.
So
I thought I was like on target.
Yeah.
Line up.
So the Southwest Broward submarket, if you look at it, it's huge. It's one of the biggest submarkets. While submarket data is great, it's also from Weston to, I think it includes Miramar. So you're really getting everything. So while that's great for a great overall general number, I also want to say, hey, what's in Weston only? Because I'm not competing with a shopping center in Davie or Pembroke Pines. I'm just in Weston.
And I guess the economics or the socioeconomic profile in Miramar or West Pembroke Pines is radically different than the profile of
Absolutely.
Weston.
So we have that done, and then
But
I also-
let's focus on that a second, Andrew.
yeah,
So Alex, it does address it in a way, right? You've gotten, you went to a submarket, which is where this asset really is.
Yeah.
And Andrew's point is, yeah, I'm in Southwest
Yeah.
Broward by the way it's defined, but the people that are coming to me are really in Weston, and my competitive set is Weston. And so, I really got to compare against what my real competitive set is, not what the book says it is.
I'll show you a map now of Southwest Broward. So this is.
Oh, it's great to see how much my students, my former students have learned. They know more than I do. When I met Andrew, we couldn't even walk and chew.
I knew nothing.
Hey, I want to say there's a case study that I do in the accounting class that no one has ever gotten to the right answer, except Andrew,
Wow.
in a development one. So just wanted to say that.
Alright, so Southwest Broward. So if you look at it, it's huge. I mean, so Weston is really from here to here. I mean, it encompasses this. You're going all the way down to Miramar, and it also includes stuff all the way to the Turnpike. So while it's a good barometer, I need more stuff that's really specific to this specific trade area.
And in CoStar, can you point to that asset and it gives you the competitive properties or no? Or you could
Somewhat. So I could go here and it's a quick overview of what it is. CoStar has all the information. Leasing. So we're leasing 1,500 square feet and a 2,600 at $40 triple net and at 28.
Can't you draw the radius? Can you draw a radius in CoStar?
Oh yeah.
And then it'll tell you, so you can define your real submarket from there.
Yes. So I guess while I'm here, I'll go over CoStar real quick. Lease analysis. For sale. If it's for sale, it'll have the information here. Comps. It shows the last trade. Some information on it. So last sold for 32.5, or I'm sorry, 32 and a quarter. And then it'll also give you more details on. Okay, so it sold for a 6 cap at a NOI of about 1.9. It'll tell me who bought it, who sold it. The brokers.
Do you use CoStar for resale, or do you use more like REEs or Real Capital Analytics? Do you use CoStar for resale comps?
Yeah. So
Okay.
what you said before is being a pack rat, and I keep everything. I mean, I keep every sale that has ever happened. I have a long Excel list, and that way I could easily reference what has sold. And if I want to say Weston, okay, well I know it's here. So I know Weston. Okay, everything that sold in Weston, it's been $547 a foot, $477, 401s. That way I can get a general census of where it's trading, and if I'm paying above price per pound on what it really is. So let's go back to CoStar. And then what's also nice is that CoStar shows analytics, and it'll show you vacancy rate, where it was in 09. I can even do a 10-year. And it'll sort of show you a trend of the property. Asking rents, as you can see, in 06 it was 25. Now it's almost 40, which is way above the Southwest Broward market. Shows me tenants. Shows who's in there. The demographics. It'll give me traffic counts. Demographics, contacts. It shows me leasing, true owner, which is good as especially when I'm calling on owners. I'll use this a lot of times because it'll have their email, their phone number, and then images. But back to market. So went through the rent comps.
Yeah, one second.
Yeah.
Just a comment that was made earlier while we were setting up. Sometimes brokers aren't like the most friendly to students. But I remember in your class, when you did the class, there was a group of students that the project I used to do in the capital markets class at the time, they picked a shopping center out in Port Charlotte or something like that on the West Coast.
Okay.
And, you know, the deal just had closed, and they went out there, and they talked to the property manager, and they talked to the broker. And the guy eventually turned them on to the guys who bought it, which were here in Boca.
Uh-huh.
And the guy opened up the door, he brought them in, and he walked them through the whole deal. Why it made sense, why it didn't make sense. So, Nicola, you're gonna hit walls sometimes, but people in the industry like to talk to people in the industry, because at the end of the day, you don't know when somebody might be your friend. I'm sure if somebody from Flagler called you, you'd probably take the call. If for no other reason, out of curiosity, right? And if for no other reason, that, you know, somewhere down the line, now you've got a contact, you've got somebody that can, you know, that you can, you know, speak with. So don't ever hesitate to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm looking for information on something.
And not only that, but I would say that a lot of the guys in the industry really share a lot of information. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've called a broker or whatever else and said, hey, you sold this deal 2 years ago. What was the public's sales there? Or hey, what are the rent comps when you sold or whatever else? Because I know that next month they might be calling me, asking me stuff. So there's a lot of shared information between us. So market, so we could say what, market's between 28 and 40 on the good spaces. And then once that's done, let's go through the expenses. So I'll sit down with my management team and I'll compare theirs to what the pro forma budget is to what we think it is. So
Can you make it
if
a
we,
little bit bigger,
Yeah.
please? Thank you.
So we know 2010, I don't care about income, expenses. Expenses are running 837, they dropped in 11 to 800, and they slowly went from 800 to 815 to 860, and then, but then why in their 2014 budget, when they decide to sell, why is it dropping 60 grand? So
that it gets a higher terminal value.
yeah, exactly. So what we do is we go through here and we say, okay, you know, and the thing that you really have to, what this I should have done is broken this up into controllable and non-controllable. Your controllable costs are, say, dumpsters and utilities, landscaping, cleaning. Your non-controllables are real estate taxes, management fees, and insurance, which are amounts that don't change no matter what. They change, but they're set by somebody else, not you.
So can you're saying you're able to find some value there, and how much you think? Like a
Yeah,
percentage of
yeah. So I mean,
You may find value or the other way.
the question is, can we run this for less than they are? Because the former ownership was a guy who owned 2 or 3 centers and that's it, versus us, who we have a ton of shopping centers. Can we use our current management and offset payroll to decrease expenses? At the end of the day, compared to last year, we decreased expenses by $10,000, which isn't really a lot, but I'm curious to see real estate taxes. So they were at 401, we're at 471, so that's 70 grand there. So realistically, if we kept this at the 405, we're running this at 70 grand less than they were. Based on our, I guess, manpower and being correct.
And based on the lease structure there, that may or may not fall into your pocket. That may fall into the tenant's pocket, but that's okay,
Which is, yeah,
because you're gonna give them then a more competitive lease rate.
yeah.
You're gonna make your center more attractive.
But the other thing too is that the Office Depot lease is only paying $1.25. So where we can decrease expenses, that's money in our pocket, since they aren't paying their full share. So we could go through the expenses. We've gone through the lease, and now is usually when I'll take a second crack at the Argus. And I'm not going to teach you guys Argus, but just sort of show you what it is, how I enter in some of my my market information, tenants.
Now, Andrew, when you do this, do you take the Argus model that the broker selling gives you, or do you build one from scratch?
I usually use theirs and I adjust it.
Okay.
Just because building one from scratch I can do, but I'll probably miss an expense or anything else. So I'll change their leasing assumptions, tenant timing. So let's first start at the rent roll. So if you look here, rent rolls in here, and let me go into the.
Did those of you who took because I've never used the developer model or program, did you guys get into like building suites and all this in the Argus course that you had, or no?
Yeah.
Yes, no?
It was more, it didn't have anything where you're actually doing analysis of existing income producing
Yeah,
properties.
see, Andrew, what happened is they did an Argus course, but they did the development module, not the
okay.
DCF. So,
You're
maybe
paying hard
just-
costs, soft costs.
Okay.
yeah, so if you back up, the DCF, which I think what we're gonna do with the program going forward is you're gonna learn both the development model and the DCF model or module. The value of this is, there's a database. So it allows you to customize suite by suite and then model out all of the different assumptions that you have. You can do all this in Excel, but depending on, so if you've got a single tenant property with a 30-year lease, Excel is a great tool. When you've got multiple tenants with multiple leases, with different lease types, with different expirations, with different rents, it becomes very complicated. So the beauty is that this is just a database that allows you to fragment or subdivide the total square footage into all the different suites, and each one of those different suites then can have all of its own underlying cash inflow assumptions. What's the market rent? What's the term? What are the bumps? What are the renewal probabilities? What happens to that space? And I'll go through some of those assumptions in a second, but so this is a suite by suite analysis of all of the tenants that are in that building. This is basically the nuts and bolts of the revenue, the cash inflow stream on this center.
So for a minute, let's pretend that we've already entered everything in. The things that I want to look at is the lease up of the vacant space, what happens with the Office Depot lease, and then market rates. This is our base case, so I left the Office Depot staying and renewing every single option. And let's go to the vacant space. So available space, I'm saying it leases in 19 months at 100% of market, which I'll get into, at leasing cost of $10 for TIs and LCs at 6%. And then market, I think market for this space is $31.50. But if there's a previous tenant in there, I'm telling Argus to run it at a higher rate of $31.50, because I could most likely push a tenant that's already in there at a higher rate because they don't want to move. And then if you look here, I could put all of my TIs, my LCs for each of the new market and the renewal, and then how this works, it's a weighted average. So it's 75% times the 3150, and then 25% times the 3050, and then you add those together to get the rent. And then the same thing for the leasing commissions and the tenant improvements. So it's 75% times 0 plus 25% plus times 7, and then the same thing for the LCs. And then rent changes, I'm at 3%, and then reimbursements, I'm at net for everybody. And then what's neat about Argus is that each space I'm able to say what's market. So let me pull up the site plan. So what I did was turn around. So since these spaces here aren't that visible, I used 3050 and 3150. For these spaces, since they're sort of in that L and they're really not, well, there's two things. They're not visible, and these guys right here are freaking bowling alleys. I mean, they're narrow spaces and they're long. So for those guys, I'm at 29. Office Depot doesn't matter because I assume that they extend. These guys, I'm at 31. For these guys here, I'm at 34. And since everything here is probably is the best space because it fronts Western Road, I'm at $35 and $40 for this guy right here, since he's on the hard corner right there. So I've entered everything in, and then Argus I use only for cash flow purposes. I don't like valuing anything in Argus because it's not really dynamic. If I export it into my Excel sheet, I could easily create sensitivities based on what year it's sold, cap rate, interest rate on my financing. What else I want to show you?
So let me just harp on that.
Yeah.
So what my experience has been is, so the DCF model allows you to build in all the capital expenditures. So it allows you to build in your income, your cash inflows, your operating expenses, your outflows. It allows you to structure debt on it. and it allows you to accumulate all the cash expenditures, your CapEx, related to any of that income stream. What my experience has been is that most people will use Argus to model all of the revenue because it's a great tool for that,
Mm-hmm.
the operating expenses, and all the TIs, leasing commissions, so all the capital expenditures are pertinent to the income stream or consequent to the income stream. Typically then you dump that into Excel, and most people will overlay debt and all their sensitivity analysis on Excel because it's a much more dynamic tool than Argus. But Argus will do all that for you as well. You can ultimately derive a purchase price and a return profile in Argus, but most people will just export the basic income, expenses, and capital expenditures and dump it into Excel and then work from there.
Yeah, I mean, Argus is a awesome tool, but it's also a tool that I hate because it's, besides the cash flows, it's really hard to manipulate and change things. And if you want a quick, well, what's a 6 cap versus a 7? It takes a lot of time. It's not easy as changing from 6 to 7. You have to go in, change it, calculate it, go back. So it's just always easier in Excel.
And it is an industry norm, and if you're going to buy or sell or finance any asset with any major institution, the first thing that you will be asked for are the Argus models. So, you know, you're financing a big asset, the bank's going to want the Argus model. Now, they may in turn, a lot of banks actually go back and do things in Excel for whatever the reason. But I can tell you the large intermediaries, the Eastills, the HFFs, the capital market groups at Cushman, CBRE, or Jones Lang LaSalle will only work exclusively. The major investment banks, the real estate groups at Goldman, at Morgan Stanley, at Merrill will only work with Argus models, and they will do all the modeling that they do with Argus. So, you know, just food for thought.
And
Get used to it. Get used to it and become familiar with it.
yeah, I mean, anytime that I'm dealing with, not all the banks, but I would say a lot of the larger banks, not the local guys, but more of the Wells Fargo's and stuff like that, they'll all ask. Most of the hedge funds and institutional guys will always ask. And if not, they'll usually have their own Argus run of themselves. Real quick, I mean, we could go into expenses. I just usually.
Andrew, can you just humor me for a
Yeah.
second, guys, because I want to share something with you after class, which I think is important for you to take. Ultimately, as it relates to modeling your income in an asset, there are known components and there are unknown components. So was it Rumsfeld talked about the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, right? So we have knowns, we have leases in place, right? So we can abstract leases, we can rely on what a seller is telling us a lease term is, and then abstract the lease and verify it. So there's a component to modeling cash flow that is relatively idiot-proof. It is what it is. It's contractually in place, and it'll throw out X income stream. It's like a bond, right? You know what's going to come, right? That part's easy. The part that becomes much more science, right? Much more art than science in the modeling process is, what about the unknown cash flows? And you say, well, what are the unknown cash flows? Well, they come in a lot of different ways. Number one, you could buy an empty building, or you can develop an empty building. And so you've got to create the underlying assumptions for that first generation space. That's number one. Number two, you can get into situations where you buy a building and there are a bunch of vacant suites. So what happens with that vacant space? And what are the assumptions that I'm going to use to model in order to ultimately value an asset? What did we say an asset was worth? What we took about in the capital markets class? Real estate is a financial asset, and a financial asset is worth nothing but the net present value of its future cash flows, right? And so, if we don't know what the future cash flows are, we can't value it. So we've got to somehow guesstimate or triangulate to what we think those cash flows are. There's a known component. What do we do with the unknown component? Well, so while Argus is a great tool, Argus is only a tool that will react to the information that we put into it. I'm trying not to look because the doodling is driving me nuts. I used to do that too, so don't worry about it. But it's like doing the artwork here. Okay, I do it too. First thing, lease rates. What's market? So Andrew's gone through a whole analysis or explanation of how he determines what market is. What's the market rate? Is it gross? Is it net? Is it modified gross, right? What are operating expense? Well, let me leave expenses for a second. Let's stay on the revenue side. What's market, right? And what's the lease structure? What vacancy factor am I going to have in the building once it's stabilized? Andrew talked about the seller here modeled 97% occupancy. What's realistic, right? Andrew's got a database that says or supports a 95% vacancy factor in a broader spectrum or a broader space. So maybe 97 isn't far-fetched. I will tell you generally, if you're going to model to have less than what a submarket has, you better have a damn good explanation as to why you're better than everybody else. And in no circumstance should you ever model 100% occupancy unless you really do have a single tenant, AAA credit, type tenant in place, all right? You should never, 97% is probably pushing the envelope, okay? That's about, you should always have some sort of vacancy factor there, okay? But, so, what's the vacancy? Is there going to be a credit loss factor? Maybe in retail with national tenants, that's not important. But get into multifamily, for example, you're going to have a certain component of rent loss. Certain people are going to skip out on their rent. If you're in a suburban office building that's a Class B building where your typical tenant is 1,500 square feet, you're going to have tenancy loss. You may not have it in a Class A building in a downtown setting. So rents, vacancy factors, credit loss factors. What are the lease terms? So when I sign a new lease, what's the lease term? What's the market telling me, right? So if you're doing office downtown, you may be doing 10, 15, 20-year leases. If you're doing suburban office, you might be doing 5-year leases. If you're doing retails in a large mall, you might be doing 15 or 20-year leases. In a community center, maybe you're doing 10, maybe you're doing 5. So you need to understand what is market for the lease term for the asset that you're underwriting. What are the bumps going to be? What are the annual escalations going to be? And these are all inputs that you need to tell Argus. Argus will not default to anything. You need to tell them what all of these factors are. Because all these factors ultimately come to build that unknown component of the cash flow, right? This will throw off certain capital expenditures, leasing commissions, tenant improvements, right? TIs, commissions, and any other concession that you may give. You may have free rent, you may have signage, you may buy out a lease, you may give a cash allowance to do something. Okay, so the revenue component is going to potentially, or most likely in this environment, throw off some sort of capital expenditure. Okay?